Hey there, great to see you in this section. You're making solid progress. I hope you're ready for the next step because we're about to dive into enhancing an existing API with the dual exposure pattern. Let's jump in. First things first, we need to add the MCP connector to our project. In Anypoint Code Builder, I'll open the pom.xml file. Now, I'll scroll down to the dependencies section. I have the required XML snippet on my clipboard, so I'll just paste it right in here. Once I save the file, Code Builder will automatically download everything we need. To keep things clean and organized, let's create a separate file for all our new MCP components. In the Explorer, I'll just right-click on the src/main/mule directory, choose Mule configuration file, and name it salesforce-system-mcp.xml. This is where all our AI-related configurations will live. Now for a really important step. Our original API is tightly coupled to its HTTP trigger because it directly references attributes.UIBrams.caseNumber. To make this logic truly reusable for an AI tool, we need to refactor it. I'll open salesforce-system-api.xml and head to the flow for getting cases. Right at the beginning of this flow, I'll add a new transform message component and use it to set a variable called caseNumber. I have the DataWave expression for this on my clipboard. And I'll paste it in. This expression intelligently checks for our new variable first, or falls back to the old URI params. Next, I'll update the mock response transform to use vars.caseNumber. Perfect. Let's do the exact same thing for the patch case flow. I'll add the same transform message at the beginning, paste in the code to set the variable, and finally, update the last transformation to use it. Now, our core logic is completely independent of the trigger and ready to be reused. All right, let's switch over to our new Salesforce system mcp.xml file. Since the canvas is empty, we can use a shortcut. I will click Create an MCP Server. This automatically creates a new flow with a tool listener inside. First, I will rename the flow to Get Case Details Flow. Now, let's select the MCP tool listener so we can configure it. I'll click the plus icon to add a new server configuration. In the new window, I'll set the configuration name to Mule-MCP-server. And for the connection type, I'll choose Streamable HTTP Server. Now for the most important part. For the listener config, I'm going to select the existing HTTP listener config. This is the key to our dual exposure pattern. Finally, let's set the public server name to Mule-MCP-server and the server version to 1.0.0. With that linked, I'll go back to the tool listeners properties. I will set the name to Get Case Details, and for the description, I will type retrieves the details of a specific Salesforce case. For the parameter schema, which tells the AI what input it needs, I have the JSON schema ready. Let me copy and paste it from my clipboard right into the schema field. The final part of our flow is adding the logic. I will add a transform message component. First, I will set its display name to setCaseNumber. Inside the transform, I will change the script. Instead of setting the payload, I want to create a variable. I will change the output to a variable named caseNumber. Now, let me paste in the data weave logic to get the case number from the tool's input.
And to finish, let's drag a flow reference component onto the canvas. I will configure it to call our newly refactored API kit flow by selecting the Get Cases case number flow. And now this step is complete.
Now, let's create our second tool for the create case operation. First, we will add another flow to our canvas. I will click Add a Flow, and I will name it Create Case Flow. Next, I will drag a new tool listener from the palette into the source area of this flow. Let's configure it. For the configuration field, there is no need to create a new one. We simply click the dropdown and select our existing Mule-MCP-server configuration. Now for the tool's details. The name will be Create Case. For the description, I will type Creates a new case in Salesforce. This tool needs a schema for the subject and description. I will now paste the JSON for that from my clipboard. There we go. For this tool, we only need to add a flow reference to the post cases flow because the data maps directly to what our original flow expects.
And now for our final tool. Let's begin by adding one more flow to our canvas. I'll name this one Update Case Flow. Just as before, I will drag a tool listener from the palette into the source area of our new flow. Oops, some ACB error. Let me drag the tool again from the palette.
In the configuration field, we will again select our existing Mule MCP server from the list. Now let's configure the tool's details. The name for this tool will be update_case. For the description, I will enter updates an existing Salesforce case. This tool's schema requires a case number and a new status. I'll paste the JSON for that in now. This tool's logic is little different as it needs a transform message component before the flow reference. I will add one now. We need this because we must prepare two different pieces of data for our original flow. First, inside the transform, we'll map the new status from the input to the payload. Next, we need to add a new target for a variable. I will click the plus icon and select variable. I will name the new variable case number. With our payload and variable targets ready, I will now paste in the complete data weave transformation logic. With the transform in place, the last step is to add a flow reference. We will configure it to call the patch cases case number API config flow to complete the process.
With all our tools built, it's time to run the application. I will now click Run and Debug and wait for the deployed message. This will take a moment, so I'm going to pause the recording until the application is ready. Okay, and we are back. As you can see, our application is now running. We can connect to our MCP server from a client, for example, here in Visual Studio Code. My connection has already been established. Now, let's open the chat by clicking the View menu and then selecting Chat. Inside the chat window, we need to switch the context to Agent. Now we can ask it to do something in plain English. I will type, "Get me case INT0001 details." The agent finds the correct tool and asks for permission to execute it. Once I approve, it shows us the response directly. Congratulations, your dual exposure API is now fully functional. And that's a wrap on enhancing an existing API with the dual exposure pattern. Fantastic work getting through that. Take a moment to absorb what we've covered. You're building a powerful new skill set, one step at a time. The next screen is waiting for you when you're ready. I'll see you there.